There we go.
Okay.
All right. You can. I know you were already wanting to enter into your discussion, but we are very excited to have Koichi Fujino here, who is from Japan and in Japan, and is our Faulkner Scholar around the world, where we are focusing, celebrating Faulkner's journey to Japan 70 years ago in 1955. And I know my name is Andrew Weaver, and I know it says Anita here, but my name's Andrew. And we have created a documentary highlighting the life and legacy of William Faulkner. And Koichi, you've been such a great advocate and supporter of the project, so thank you for that. If you're able to give a brief intro about yourself, that would be fantastic. But I also don't want to derail the conversation that you were diving into, because I think it was really fascinating. So you're welcome to dive right in.
Yeah, actually, thank you so much for your introducing me. Actually, hi everyone. I'm Koichi Fujino, and I am an author of the with W.C. Faulkner and William Faulkner and digital literacy. And this I'm kind of the writing about studying and teaching W.C. Faulkner and William Faulkner and digital literacy to talk about some kind of the combination of the people is very important for the William Faulkner's works, especially his combination with the great grandfather. And I'm very big fan of the William Faulkner's great grandfather also, and I'm studying some kind of his old Southern literature world also. So this is a kind of the very good opportunity for me to have some kind of the sharing with you all about my own study, and also today's connecting my theme to today's situation with Andrew and with some audiences. Thank you. And I think that I'm starting with my talk about today's situation. Today's situation is some kind of the post-truth situation in today's world. Because of the mainly because of our political difficulties of the how to talk with our own world. We are sometimes feeling that we are having the too much freedom world. We are too much connected sometimes, because of the social network or some kind of the digital devices. But at the same time, I'm feeling that such a kind of the feeling about what we should do situation is the common with the William Faulkner's world also. Especially after the World War One, William Faulkner started with his own modern literature as at the Sound and the Fury, and in the Sound and the Fury, the Faulkner is writing about in what way we should compose our world, recompose our world again in such a kind of the free world, in such a kind of the very fragmented or some kind of the too much amoralistic situation and in among the people. So because of such a kind of the too much freedom world, the William Faulkner actually searching for some kind of the new situation, a kind of the new way of the talk about the world, and such a kind of the Faulkner's a kind of the very some kind of the very hard try for him is very same situation for us all. We are trying to talk about our own situation, but we do not know what to say about that in a way. So how we realize about that, how in what way, how logically explain about that. So, but anyway, I would like to start with such a kind of the recognition of such a kind of the same situation of our world. Yeah. And I think that Andrew, maybe how do you feel about today's world? It's a kind of the very enjoyable situation, like a game, but at the same time, we are dealing with some kind of the sad game or happy game about our today's world. you know.
Yeah, I think there's a lot that shifts around. But I think too, like you said, like we talked about before, there's a lot of things where there's a lot of conflicts kind of at the time that Faulkner was growing up, and a lot of his time, very sophisticated world, but also living that old American South life. And I think there's a lot of that still happens here in the United States. Um, and I think it's still applicable to a lot of different countries as well. But, I think that's where Faulkner's been able to beautifully, like, kind of meld those two together and have that foresight to see a lot of what could be the future of that and how people can live together in a world that is both old and new. But that's part of why we're here is, helping share his name and his legacy and keep that alive.
Yeah, actually, the naming his legacy is also very important for us. We are sometimes thinking that Faulkner's legacy is, the American South legacy. The American South, very unique history, and also it's a kind of the very complex, the relationship between the people, especially the kind of the slavery, history of the slavery, and the experiences of the losing of the war in the civil war, and after that Reconstruction days, and also some kind of the economical development, as a kind of the New South after maybe the 20th century. In such a kind of the situation is but a kind of the experiences we are sharing after the World War II, and we are actually accepting such a kind of the American South's experiences and legacy is a common one for us. It's a very fascinating experiencing that we are realizing that, when we are opening up the William Faulkner's world, we are reading somehow a kind of the world we have already known. It's a very fascinating experience. It's a foreign world, but at the same time, our world. It's a kind of the enigma and the mystery, and we are trying to figure out about that.
Yeah. Well, and I was going to say too, how do you think William Faulkner's work has influenced like post-war Japanese literature, culture? I know we've talked about it with your personal journey as well. So like, how has that developed? Influence?
Yeah, actually, Faulkner's influencing to Japan is a very intellectual one, especially for the American literature scholars and also the modern Japanese authors, especially the Kenzaburo Oe or Kenji Nakagami, and also some of the critics like the Kojin Karatani. These people are accepting the Faulkner's world as a kind of the way for them to express their own personal experience in Japan, especially for the Kenzaburo Oe and the Nakagami Kenji. In these two authors' cases, they are actually growing up in a very small town in the countryside of Japan, and they are somehow going to the Tokyo. The Tokyo is a kind of a very big city and a very international city, and they are actually trying to open up their own personal local situation to much more universal way. The Faulkner's work is actually giving a very big hint for them in what way they can open up their own local experiences to the world. And actually, Kenzaburo Oe developing his own personal experiences in a much more universal way and gets the Nobel Prize. And Nakagami Kenji's case, he is actually opening up his own experiences, getting some advices that he can connect his world to the Faulkner's world by the very a kind of the critic of the Kojin Karatani. Kojin Karatani is actually advising to the Nakagami Kenji, you can read the William Faulkner and you can develop your own world in such a kind of the William Faulkner's way. And he is developing his own personal experiences when he was young to a kind of much more complex and very meaningful way for the Japanese literature. I think that these two authors developing of their own personal experiences in a universal way is one of two of the most important examples of the Japanese literature, which is experiences some kind of the influences from the William Faulkner. Do you know the Kenzaburo Oe or Kenji Nakagami? No, yeah, that's actually it's not so common for the universal, the world readers. But at the same time, I think that these readers are such a kind of the same ways of the experiences in the Latin America, in the South America, authors. So, Garcia Marquez, do you know the Garcia Marquez and other people? They are experiencing William Faulkner, their own experiences also, in such a kind of the way, in a very international situation, our experiences are shared with the other international authors to develop the William Faulkner's legacy in much more complex way or in much more developed way. They are trying. But at the same time, they are also returning back to the William Faulkner's world again and again to recognize or deepen their own world or their own recognition.
Yeah. And I was going to say too, as far as, Faulkner's work, obviously I want to talk about Faulkner's journey, and his trip in Japan and highlight that. But, also something I think that's really important is the growing translations and the availability of Faulkner's work in Japan. How are you, and how are younger readers able to capture and become interested in Faulkner? How is that happening in Japan? Because I know, just there's two different, like we were talking about with culture and society, there's two different stages, I guess, that are happening with that.
Yeah, actually, I actually actually 2 days before, I actually meet a very young guy who is actually the universal student, undergraduate student, the second grade, and he is actually reading the William Faulkner's three works, the Sun and the Fury, and Light in August, and Absalom, Of course, he read them in Japanese, the Japanese translation, but he is so fascinated with the William Faulkner's world, so he is trying to develop his own experiences. But I think that because of the plenty of the the translation of the Japanese language of the William Faulkner's works, many young people, I think that some of the young people are still now experiencing William Faulkner's world in their translations. That is a very good entrance for them to get into the William Faulkner's world. And I feel that it is still fascinating for them to read the William Faulkner's works because maybe they are actually finding out that I feel that they are feeling that William Faulkner's works is a very difficult, but at the same time, it is a very good entrance for the American culture or American literature. That's very important for them to. Maybe they are feeling that it is a very intellectual literature, very full of the intellectual they should need, to understand that. It means that it is a very good opportunity for them to develop their own intelligence in English, maybe, when they are reading the Faulkner. We are always feeling that it is a very challenging to read the William Faulkner's works, even for me today. But at the same time, when we are actually reading the Faulkner's works, we are always refreshing our own worldview, to develop our own interpretation of the William Faulkner's works. It's a kind of the very intellectual experiences for the Japanese people and for some of the Japanese, the Japanese students also. So I think that's a kind of the good pattern for the Japanese students, young students, to get into the William Faulkner's world.
Gotcha. I love it. And let's dive in a little bit into the conference. I want to talk about the conference that just happened, but also Faulkner's journey and his trip there. I think let's dive in a little bit into that and how important and influential that was from a cultural standpoint, but also just to help bridge two cultures together. And what have you seen as the outcome from Faulkner's trip 70 years ago? Now 70 years have passed. How has that echoed into Japan, its culture, its life? Not even just with scholars, but just in the common world.
Yeah. Actually, do you know the Japanese, the coffee maker create the kind of the a brand of the coffee, the boss, and the boss is actually imprinting the William Faulkner's image in front of the cover of that coffee products, because it's a kind of the Japanese thing. The boss is a very famous Japanese coffee maker, like the Starbucks in America, and that the boss brand is actually taking the Faulkner's image, the holding some kind of the pipe in front of the people and in front of the face, and it is a very symbolic, the icon for the one of the Japanese famous coffee makers. In such a kind of the way, the Faulkner's image is actually, the spreaded into the Japanese common culture as a very familiar way for the people. And also, maybe the Faulkner is a very symbolic person who is representing some kind of the gentility or some kind of the generosity or some kind of the understandability of the America, actually contrasting to the America's another side, which is represented by the MacArthur, the General MacArthur after the World War II. It is a kind of the very strong image of America, a strong right side or some kind of the, very aggressive one, maybe, and also some kind of the very strong leadership of America. But the William Faulkner is representing some kind of another side of America. It is a kind of the feeling some kind of the generosity or familiarity or some kind of the very understandability among us, So it's a very good influences for us to have some kind of the common connection with American literature and American culture and Japanese culture also.
Yeah. And can you share, I was not there, but some of our team, Anita, who is actually traveling right now, she's on a plane across the world. So some of our team went to Japan for the conference earlier this year. Can you kind of share, and you already mentioned this a little bit with some of the scholars from the U.S. coming to Japan too. What was this conference? What was the purpose of it? What did you all learn?
Actually, that conference started with the project with J. Watson, Dr. J. Watson. Dr. J. Watson is actually having a chance to visiting Japan, and he want to give some lecture to Japan in several ways. And I actually welcoming the J. Watson at the Kyushu, in my local area, and he is actually enjoying his lecture about the Faulkner at that place, and I actually take part in the lecture with the Jay at the Nagano and the Tokyo also in our conference at Japan after the 70 years after of the visiting of the William Faulkner. And this experience is giving us to refreshing our own memory about the William Faulkner's visiting in Nagano, and at the same time we are actually recognizing that in what way we should recomposing our own experiences of the William Faulkner. You know, the William Faulkner is coming to Japan in the 1955 in the middle of the Cold War days. In such a kind of the political situation, William Faulkner is representing the American government, some kind of the policies or some kind of the he is becoming a kind of the agency of the American governments. Because of such a kind of the pressure, sometimes we are feeling that the William Faulkner is a very generous person and maybe personally is a very good person, but at the same time we are actually directed or we are actually conducted to feel in what way we should accept the William Faulkner's experience. Can you understand that? When you are actually accepting the William Faulkner as a Nobel Prize author at that day from America, it is a very, very full of the political meaning about that. Sometimes we do not give a free comment about that. We are actually feeling some kind of the pressure about that. We are actually giving a kind of the compliment to the Faulkners coming to Japan in a way. In such a kind of the situation, we are actually directed our own way of the study of the Faulkner under some kind of the political pressure. Now we are a little free from such a kind of the pressure, and we should recognize our own what kind of the things happened when William Faulkner coming to Japan, and in what way we can interpret such a kind of the meaning of that. Actually, many Japanese scholars gathering at the Nagano in this year, in Nagano, and I hear many Japanese scholars, a kind of the presentation at the Nagano, and I hear that, and I feel that they are full of the energy to recognize or some kind of the interpretation of our situation again in English, and opening up our own experiences or our own historical experiences in the today's international world, without maybe I'm hoping that without any political pressure, in a way.
Absolutely. Well, I also want to be mindful of everybody's time here, but I know if there's anything else you wanted to share, but also I wanted to open it up to see if Masaya or Kintaro had any questions or comments that they would like to share to kind of continue and open up that dialogue for the next couple of minutes.
Yeah, I actually want to hear some kind of the comments from them because they are very good scholars about the Faulkner, I believe.
Oh, great.
Yes.
Mm.
Professor Kentaro Yamada, can you give us some kind of the comments from you?
Mm-hmm. I see. Okay. Okay. Thank you for your very interesting, the talk about the summary of the Faulkner in Japan. I have questions about the topic I recently saw in the movie. Faulkner's, in the movie, the main idea of the influence of Faulkner in Japan is about his talk about the democracy and so on. And I think that the intention of the description is that trying to describe how the politics are related to the the literary things. But in general, democracy wasn't the only topic he talked in Japan. He is more interested in the humanity and other general topics as well. So do you have some any thoughts about how it should be, what kind of ideas should be included in talking about the Faulkner's legacy?
Yes, I actually feel that the Faulkner's appearance in Japan is also representing some kind of the universal truth, that he want to tell to the Japanese people. But this is a very important point for us to have, because the William Faulkner seems like talking about the universal truth about the world, his literature world, and he is encouraging to the Japanese people to open up their own experiences as a kind of the universal way or some kind of the democratic way to the world. But from today's point of view, it seems like that Faulkner is telling the universal truth, but at the same time, it's telling a kind of the American liberalism to the Japanese people in a way. So we are actually recognizing that William Faulkner is in the one side, he is actually, from today's point of view, he is pretending that he is talking about the universal truth, but at the same time, he is actually representing the American policy or a kind of the American, in a way, some kind of the way of expanding of their own American liberalism to the world. So this is a very important historical meaning of the Faulkner's experiences in Japan, and we can reposition such a kind of the experiences in today. It's a very complicated way, but I think it is very interesting for us.
And I think too, as far as the documentary and the content, that's something that we're actually working on, because I know Anita, when the executive producer of the film, went, this is really why we have these conversations. We have had conversations in Bulgaria, France, England, here in the United States. I think we've had another one. Oh gosh, I'm forgetting all the places that we've gone around the world. But the beautiful part of this is we want to hear all of these different perspectives, because Faulkner, despite being, yes, we recognize him as, a literary figure. What we also learned is in Japan, there was some sentiment of, yep, he is there, he is representing America to an extent, but you're absolutely right as well in the stance that, he was there for the humanities. And but even with that, we're working on another piece right now that kind of highlights more so his trip there, his journey, and there's other parts that were not as well known and definitely not as advertised, where he was not the best advocate, for peace and for the culture and for the humanities, and so that was kind of an interesting thing that we had learned and are wanting to further embellish, because I think too, William Faulkner, as much as we love him, he's also is a little flawed as well. He is not perfect, and I think that's what makes him human, and that's what makes him able for people to connect with him and say, okay, I can understand this and I can, accept what you're saying, because he is a flawed person as well.
Yeah, that's right. I think that the Anita and movies, your movies. Very beautiful point is that you are actually concluding the problem as a kind of the open ending for all the people. Especially about the Faulkner's race problem. As a kind of the southern person, southern gentleman, he is actually trying to be a humanistic person, but at the same time he is cannot free from the American South's history or American history's legacy about the racism. So sometimes it is a very good for us to watching the international scholars, and many scholars are commenting Faulkner's racial problem in various ways. And they are not giving any conclusion about that. In a way, he is very humanistic, but at the same time, he seems like some kind of the very typical Southern gentleman, about the race. So, in such a kind of the open up problem and the open ending is let us consider what kind of in what way we should consider about that. That's a very good for me experience for me to watching your movie.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
It's very good, and also some of some Japanese scholars, Yamamoto Yuko and also the Tanaka Hisao, they are giving the good comments about the Faulkner. It is very fascinating for me to watching them their comments on the movie also in Japan.
Yeah, and I think too, it's all about perspective, right? Like, the goal of our documentary is to preserve the legacy of Faulkner, but also to share both sides of that. He is a flawed figure, and kind of to the common people, because really, people who are studying Faulkner scholars such as yourself, are at a whole other level in studying and understanding his works. But for people to, one of the reasons why we have this out here is for people to help understand, gain knowledge, and learn more about Faulkner. These discussions have been, Koichi, I know you've been on one or two already as well, and it's been lovely to see people who have been fans of Faulkner or who have heard of the name, but they decided to join, and check out this session to see who really is William Faulkner, or what. I watched this film and I was really deeply fascinated by him, and this is where we dive in and get these different perspectives.
That's right. I think that the very important point is that when we are talking about Faulkner, we are always recognizing that some kind of the eyes of the international people always, We are sometimes recognizing the Asian people's eyes or African American people's eyes. Also, even from the Islamic people's eyes, we are actually should recognize, to talk about Faulkner. Faulkner is a very local, southern style author, and sometimes he is revealing some kind of the very narrow eyes, or some kind of the very conservative attitude about the world's problem. But we are now talking about it in a kind of much more international way. That's a very good way for us to reconsidering what kind of the situation we are now living, even today. We are feeling that we are free. We are feeling that we are connecting to the international people much more than before. But at the same time, we are sometimes feeling our own very conservative feeling in sometimes the bottom of our mind. It's a kind of the historical components, of our own mind. And also, we should deal with such a kind of the legacy by our own experiences, and at the same time when we are reading the William Faulkner. That's a very good experiences. And also we are watching your movie in the same way, We are sometimes wondering in what way we should respond to such a kind of the program.
Yeah, Yeah, exactly. And it's supposed to. That's the purpose, is to elicit a response for that. Absolutely. I want to make sure the floor is still open. Messiah, did you have any questions or comments you would like to share as well?
Well, thank you very much for this impressive conversation and talking, and just Professor Fujino, just Faulkner's writing. One of Faulkner's writing, he left when he left Japan. He wrote To the Youth of Japan, and in that essay, he wrote that Faulkner expects that some group of Japanese writers who will speak not a Japanese truth but a universal truth, and definitely any literature can talk about universal truth, but as Faulkner wrote The Sound and Fury, his writing is at first focuses on a local truth, southern truth, rather than universal truth. So I'm wondering if this the use of Japan is truly came from his true feeling. I'm just wondering, maybe his writing was under the influence of political side, perhaps. And so could you give me some ideas about his writing, especially this this section, not a Japanese truth but a universal truth. Yes. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Very important question about that. I'm also reminding your passage when I am commenting the universal truth, when I'm mentioning about the William Faulkner at the Nakano. And I sometimes feel that William Faulkner starts with, a kind of the local popular author in the South, It means that he is inheriting the Southern author's legacy of the popular culture from the great-grandfather. The great-grandfather, W.C. Faulkner, was a kind of the bestseller author in the 19th century. And his popularity among the people influences to the William Faulkner, and William Faulkner trying to be a kind of the popular author from his own career from the start point. I think that actually his first novel, The Soldier's Pay, is a kind of the lost generations, the novel in a way, and he is trying to be a kind of the very young popular author because in such a kind of the novel. And I think that because of such a kind of the ambition of his own, the writing, he is always recognizing that he is writing some kind of the personal experiences, but at the same time he is open up that that is a much more kind of the very more universal way for the many readers. At the same time, he trying to, in a way, imitating the James Joyce or some kind of the T.S. Eliot, and trying to be a kind of such a kind of the very advanced author, in that days. His such a kind of the ambition is connected with his own local writing. Because of such a kind of the connection, he is actually always recognizing these two things at the same time, locality and the universality. And I think that in Faulkner's Nagano's comment to the Japanese youth is the most important point is that he is mentioning the Japanese truth and the universal truth in a same passage of his own comments, for the Japanese students. He is actually recommending that don't talk about Japanese truth, but talk about universal truth, he says, but at the same time he is mentioning the Japanese truth in that passage it means that he is actually maybe unconsciously recommending that you should recognize Japanese truth, but you should open it in a universal way. You know, actually, I think that sometimes the William Faulkner is always having the double mind. You know, the double mind means, you know, he is a local person, but at the same time, he is a universal person. In such a kind of the double mind condition, he is always saying some controversial comments about some things. For example, the truth. He is, of course, people is naturally having the local truth, but at the same time, he is always want to open that in a universal way. I think that his comments in the Nagano is representing such a kind of the William Faulkner's double mind situation. You know, he is actually believing that the people having the local mind, for example, the Southern American South mind, but at the same time, they actually can't share having some kind of the universal mind. That's my own interpretation about the Faulkner's comments about that. And I'm sometimes feeling, I also feeling that such a kind of the, you know, the how to understand the William Faulkner's comment is always troublesome for us all, you know. He is always troublesome person, you know, so it's a very, very difficult. But my understanding about the Faulkner is always he is a kind of the double mind person in a way. But I think it's a very understandable for us all.
So his writing has two sides, perhaps, you know, not only political side, but also, you know, his personal voice as a true author, as a Southern author, and also as a universal author like that. So I agree with, you know, what you said, and thank you very much. Very, you know, insightful interpretation. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you very much for your understanding for me. You know, it is sometimes very difficult, you know, to understand such a kind of the complicated mind, you know, situation. But I'm happy for me to I appreciate for your understanding. Thank you.
Very much.
Well, this has been fantastic. I do have to say, you know, I do really appreciate everybody's contributions. I want to be mindful of our time as well. I know it's been coming up on an hour right now, and I know it is early in the morning in Japan as well for you. So, you know, I just wanted to say thank you, Koichi, so much for your time. Thank you for being a huge supporter of the film and of our community. And Masaya Kintaro, thank you both for joining us as well. We really appreciate that, and your questions and contributions as well, I think, are extremely valid. And you know, Faulkner is a very complex figure, and that's why we want to have these discussions and keep them open-minded to see how everybody perceives Faulkner, right? And so thank you so much for your contributions as well.
Thank you so much, Andrew, for your giving me such a kind of the chance to share my own experience with you all. It's a very, very enjoyable conversation with you all. Thank you.
Likewise.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, with this, we will send out an email probably tomorrow. Well, I guess it'll probably be the same day for you. For the United States, it'll be tomorrow. But we will send out just for a survey. Would love to get your thoughts. And we are possibly going to be having one in October, which might be with a very famous book publisher associated with Faulkner. If that does not happen, though, we will definitely be having one in November. So we're still lining our session up for October. So we would love for Masaya Kintaro, for you both to stay along for the journey of Faulkner. We have a lot of other exciting things planned as well. So thank you all so much for your time, and hope you have an amazing day.